Welcome to the very first podcast of the New Earth Army. Glad you're tapping in, you're tuning in with universal spiritual wisdom. The New Earth Army is dedicated to provide tools, teachings, and technologies to support us in awakening, to rise from the conditioned self to the higher self, to a place where true joy, wholeness, awakening, love, and presence can be found, can be experienced. And we want to be an embodiment. And I see, yes, the masses are awakening, but there are always people on the forefront that truly are here, that are incarnated to lift humanity. Souls, very powerful souls that came to earth to remember the ancient truth, the universal wisdom, the timeless wisdom that we all need. Like water, like food, we need that wisdom in order to rise and to break with the illusion that keeps us trapped, fearful, anxious, and in a place of lack. So, this podcast, the New Earth Army podcast, is dedicated to bring spiritual wisdom, universal spiritual wisdom to you every week, every Sunday. So, that is an exciting journey ahead, and I'm looking forward. Today, I have a promising theme. We started with something powerful from the Kabbalah, but I'm sure you will find it in the Christianity and maybe through other words and other ways of expression. You will find it pretty much everywhere where people tap into higher consciousness. So, let me share. The theme is alignment with presence and consciousness as our sacred responsibility. Let us repeat that. Alignment with presence and consciousness as our sacred duty and responsibility. I believe we all have a spiritual responsibility. At least the moment we awaken to a certain degree and we tap into that ability to observe the mind, the language of ego, our conditionings, the way we were raised and imprinted by society, our traumas, the pain of the past, which Eckhart Tolle so beautifully describes as the pain body, all that needs to be observed. That is for me the foundation of awakening. If we do not have the capacity to observe that dynamic, those moments when we are truly triggered, then we are blind, spiritually spoken. Then we are fully trapped in the illusion of the world, trapped in a state of fear, separation, and let's truly face it, a place of darkness, because we cannot see the reality. And so the first spiritual responsibility we have is to cultivate presence, is to cultivate that observer mind. And here we step and we recognize the first major tool we have is meditation. Meditation is probably the most important, most universal, and most potent and efficient way to awaken, to lift consciousness, to expand consciousness in a way that we can hold space for the dynamics and all the processes that are going on in our life. And today we want to go a little step further. we want to implement and remember an important rule from the Kabbalah. It's the most important rule, and it says that we do not want to live in a reactive relationship with the world. So what does that mean? We all know it because we all live in a reactive relationship to the world. When I look into my life, I see, oh yeah, Chris is very reactive and has been very reactive to outer circumstances. For example, the theme of money. When there is a lack of money and a pile of bills which cannot be paid, there is a part in me that is reactive to that, stressed, and comes from a place of lack. Like, oh, I have a responsibility to pay the bills, but there is a lack amount of money on my bank account. That is not a great match. So there, my ego starts to react to it because their ego is programmed by the world. And there are many countless moments where we react. For example, relationships. Beautiful place to be aware when you tap into a reactive behavior. My previous relationships were oftentimes a bombardment of reactive behavior. Emotions triggered, arguments, back and forth, blaming the other, being disappointed, judgmental. The place of lack, constantly nourished through the dynamic of the relationship. Almost no capacity to step back and just observe what is going on. That is how strong those reactive behaviors are. The emotional and mental triggers are immense. But the spiritual practice demands your ability to step back and to pause and to observe. And if you live in a relationship that is, let's call it toxic, because it is very reactive, then at least one can do the spiritual work, and that is already powerful. You can step back and no longer feed their reactive pattern, but to hold space, to feel. And in the moment when we are triggered emotionally or mentally, it is tough to practice to not be reactive. But therefore, we need, let's go back to the meditation, we need to have a strong meditative practice. So we cultivate and we build the strengths of presence. So then in the moment when the fight is full on, when the battlefield is in full action, that we then can call the strengths of presence, we can call the strength of awareness, we can demand to hold space for that moment, and we rise above the moment, we rise above the reactive behavior. And the world is, spiritually spoken, the ultimate battlefield to learn to not be reactive. Because there are every day 1,000 reasons to be reactive. The media, the ongoing wars, the pain of the world, the madness of the world. We are in relationships with loved ones. We have complex, chaotic family situations. We have a job. We have economy. We have pressure from all directions, demanding our attention and our ability to perform, to be responsible for many things. So it is That is the definition of the holy war, the spiritual war, that we are on the marketplace, we are in the world, fully in the world, but we learn to break the pattern of reactive behavior in every aspect. That is an important part. Every aspect. If it's money, if it's relationship, if it's family, if it's business, if it's love life, if you're just unsatisfied with your life circumstances, it doesn't matter. We do not feed the reactive relationship with the world, but we break it. And it is important to understand here that when there is an emotion or a mental thought triggered, that we not repress it. Because that is not how we elevate. That is not how we rise beyond, how we lift into higher energies. But repressing is a contraction. And we go even deeper into a state of tension and separation. So repressing is actually the opposite. We want to hold space. Yes, we validate the pain, the fear, our ego, our conditioning, whatever it is. We value it and we hold space, but we do not react out of that. We do not feed it. I think it's clear by now, right? And then in Kabbalah, they have a powerful word. The mantra is simple: stop. And it's not just stop, but it's what a pleasure. I mean, think about that. That's enormously powerful mantra. When you are triggered and you're able to say stop, what a pleasure, you're completely reframing the dynamic. Instead of being the victim of what is going on, you say, wow, that is powerful. I'm experiencing pain of the past. I am witnessing my reactive relation with that situation, my reactive behavior with that situation. I'm observing my programming with that situation, how I'm programmed. What a pleasure. Because that is the best place, the most powerful place to rise. So when we want to truly awaken, when we want to live a life of fullness, of wholeness, of fully being in the light, fully being with God, then we must use those critical, spicy, painful, challenging moments as a gateway, as a portal to the higher reality. That is why we say, what a pleasure, because it's exciting. Oh, I'm in depth 30,000 francs. That's not just a fiction number, that's reality. I am in depth 30,000 francs right now. But I say, that's just a number. It's not more, it's not less. But in my previous years, my path of transformation and awakening, there was a time where I was terrified about that, where I was living in fear and in that state where, oh my God, now I have to work my ass off. I have to fully obey to the system. I have to pay it back right away. I have to dim down my light. I have to step into the hustle culture. I need to be a slave of the system and to just work, pay back. But that is not the way. That is not a new way. That is the old way. That is coming from a place of lack, coming from a place of limitation, coming from a place where we are trapped in the illusion of a separated world, where you have to work for your own survival, for your own gains, and all that we break. So now there is still the depth, but it's just what it is. And I know my highest priority is to be in alignment, to call God into the center of my life, and not the thing that I perceive as a problem or a limitation. Because that is why so many people are in constant worry, in constant anxiety, because of the limitations of the world. You might lose your job. You might lose the health. You might lose the money. You have all these obligations to do, all these demands to fulfill. Yes. So I'm still willing and excited to pay every single bill back, but not through dimming down my light and falling into the trap of a hustle culture, into the trap of I'm coming and acting out of reactive behavior and a place of lack. Because when we react, it's always from a place of lack. It's always because we are separated from the abundance and the blessings of the Creator. That is just how it is. So reactive behavior is how we break our alignment with God and how we fall into the illusion of the world and into the illusion of separation. And no matter your outer circumstances, no matter how limiting they are, alignment is what we need to practice. And alignment means to pause, to observe. What a pleasure. That is great. What is my reactive behavior? Now I see my darkness. I see and feel my fear. I'm witnessing all the negativity that I'm still carrying my vessel. And yes, I'm going beyond. This I use as a vehicle to rise above the world and to bring the Creator back into the center of my heart. Not the depth of my bank account I put in the center, because I will feed my worry. I will feed my state of lack. I will react and punish myself and the world. I create more darkness for myself and the world. So I let it as it is, and I bring alignment to the center. I bring God to the center. That is our sacred duty. And once we are able to pause, to witness, what a pleasure, now starts the elevation. And my favorite way to elevate is through prayer. A sacred prayer to the Creator. Simple as that. Sharing my doubts, my fears, my worries, my anxiety with the Creator. Hey, Creator, I'm feeling that. I'm feeling like a piece of nothing, without value. I'm feeling so unsuccessful. I'm feeling broken in the heart because the person I was so attached to just left me. And now I feel miserable. I feel in pain. I'm so afraid of that illness, that I'm mentally breaking and falling apart, that I cannot hold the light. I cannot see the light. I cannot feel the light. Finding and practicing words and to speak right with the source, to step into a dialogue with the source. That is how we rise. That is how I experienced and still experience every time again and again how I elevate, how I overcome the pull of the world, the pull of gravity, the pull of darkness. And it's beautiful to remember some some verses from the Bible, which I want to share one with you. It's from Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. That is for me why I'm meditating, because of that stillness. I practice to observe and to hold space. I step into presence, and presence in its essence, its stillness, formless awareness. And in that, I experience oneness. Through that, I expand into who I really am, my higher self, my formless consciousness. I experience wholeness. I experience God. So prayer is a way to tap into that, like meditation. And yes, I call it a battle because every day we can fall again. There is no guarantee. There is no, okay, now I build so much good spiritual work, I'm safe for the next 10 years. Sadly, that's not the case. Every moment, every situation could be an enormous trigger for you where you have to not react, but what a pleasure holding space. For example, yesterday I was with my child. To raise a child consciously is probably one of the greatest spiritual practices of not being reactive, of the child perfectly mirrors your own conditioning, your own degree of blindness. And so we were in the swimming, and suddenly another child came, which I already observed. It was a very aggressive child, a little older than my son. And suddenly he passed by, and out of nowhere he attacked my son. Boom, punched into his face, and of course I react. Of course, pull my son away. And that child was in a terrible place mentally, emotionally. It started to laugh, like my son cried. He started to laugh about that situation, and he was caretaken by his grandfather, who was already physically very handicapped. So it was a wild situation. He tried to apologize, but he could not even handle that child because it was like completely overpowered. And that was a moment where, like, okay, whoa, what is my place now? Okay, I protect my child. That's the first thing I have to do. Make sure he doesn't continue to attack. Put him on distance. But then energetically, yes, I give care, I give love to my child, I support him. But in the same time, the challenge was not to see the child as the enemy, as the problem, and not to create that angry frequency. So I'm like seeing him, this little poor creature, as the enemy, as the one that is a threat. And it took me a moment, because that was a new situation for me. It came out of nowhere, and I was confronted with something I never experienced before, that my child gets attacked, and how do I react? And then, of course, I protected my child, and I created internally a state of safety and love. Even for that child, because I knew that child pretty likely is surrounded by not very conscious and supportive parents, or whatever led to that child's mental, emotional state, I don't know. But I sent love and empowerment into the space. And that was my way of stepping out of the victim and this where I'm reactive, where I'm simply reactive and judgmental and start to argue internally like, oh, this grandfather, he cannot handle his child, and why is he even there? And then this child, you should punish this child for this, what he did to my, and it's so this, I noticed this dialogue happen internally, started to happen, but that is reactive behavior. I don't invest into that. I rise above. And that was a great learning experience. Another way how I experience reactive behavior every single day is in the streets when there is traffic and there is stress and people horn and do you because you behaved wrong in their perception, or you didn't saw the green light immediately, and that is I feel like the traffic is a very reactive place and perfect for spiritual practice, to rise beyond, to not be engaging in that dynamics. So the point is, every day in the daily battlefield, in the holy war, we have plenty, endless possibilities to break reactive behavior and to hold space for our process, for the thoughts, for the emotions, and then to say, what a pleasure. And I'm choosing to rise beyond. I'm choosing to connect to God, not to the world. I'm not bowing to the world. I'm not bowing to the money. I'm not bowing to the illusion of lack. I'm not bowing to the belief that I have duties which dim down my life. I'm not bowing to a life that doesn't serve me, but dims down my energy, punishes me, not creating freedom and happiness. So, not bowing to the world, because that is reactive, but to bring God to the center, to welcome God back to your heart, to the center, to reunite with God again and again, especially and most powerfully when you are reactive. So every time we are triggered, it's a blessing, it's a gift. It looks like it's a problem. It looks like it is something we don't want to have in our life. Yeah, you might be feeling you are right in that situation. You have all the right to defend and to argue and to blame and to judge. You're trying to manipulate. You're trying to control the outer world, to fix situations before they get out of order. But all that is reactive. All that is driven by ego, by your lower selfish desires. And we must break with that pattern if we want to awaken, if we want to live through the soul, experience life through the soul, through the Creator. Another way in the Bible that is putting it in the most accurate way is that we want to seek the kingdom first. And that is exactly what we're doing here. We are not reacting to the world, but we are aligning with the Creator. We're seeking the kingdom first. And through that, we experience wholeness. We rise above the limitation. We rise above the separation. And in that wholeness, we trust, we believe, we know everything will come. The great ideas will come. How to tackle situations gracefully. How to gain wealth. How to build wealth without being a slave, without punishing, without breaking your alignment with spirit. How to create wealth because you are so much tapped into wealth through the Creator. Because the soul is a reflection of wholeness. And your outer world will reflect your alignment by time. Maybe not today. I still have depth on the account. It's still real in the world, but it's not real in spirit. Because in spirit, I'm complete. I'm whole. When I can hold my alignment, and that is the spiritual test, if I can hold my alignment long enough, deep enough, nurture it over and over, rise beyond logic, my outer world must follow and be a reflection of my alignment. And oftentimes we believe it's vice versa. We have to grind, we have to suffer, we have to punish ourselves, we have to go through the pain, we have to work, we have to have a miserable life, and finally in the future, when we're lucky and worked hard enough, then we're gonna reach a moment of liberation. That is the illusion. That is the ego. That is how we are trapped in time. But we want to break reactive behavior and break collapse time and rise beyond. That is how we create a new destiny, how we experience the new earth. This is how we bring blessings to ourselves and to our people, to our tribe. This is how we become carrier of consciousness and help even on a global scale to transition to a higher state of consciousness. My closing words here, I want to remember that the spiritual work is something we not only do for ourselves, but we do it for a greater good. It's like when I connect to the Creator, I know the Creator has a mission for me. My soul has a purpose, a mission to complete. It has a destiny. And when I connect and fully align, everything I'm doing is a service and a contribution. And that is where we devote, where a path of devotion starts. Yes, but for today, I want to hold it with this. A last quote from the Bible, Exodus 14:14. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Let's close our eyes and let's repeat this. Let's really feel the weight, the power of those words. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. With that sentence, with that short prayer, I want to close the first episode. Thank you, and see you.